Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This Day in Sports History. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's June 20th, and on this day in different years, two very memorable golf shots disappeared into the bottom of the cup. Let's start in 1982 at the U.S. Open, held that year at Pebble Beach. Tom Watson started the final round tied for the lead at 4 under. Jack Nicklaus was 3 shots back, and he was playing 3 groups in front of Watson. Nicklaus had not really been much of a factor in the tournament. I mean, sure, he's sitting in the top 10 to start the final day, but he had been sort of flying under the radar as much as Nicklaus could do in those days. But he announced his presence as a true contender when he birdied 5 straight holes on the front side. When Jack closed out his round with a 69, he was just a shot back of Watson. When Watson bogeyed the 16th, they were tied. The 17th was a 200-yard par 3 with a tricky green. It's small, guarded by a lot of bunkers, and requires a precise shot. Watson did not hit his 2-iron as precisely as he needed, and it carried a little long, nestling in the thick greenside rough. Watson turned to his caddy, Bruce Edwards, and he said, "That's dead." When he got to the ball, it was sitting up a little, but it was still in thick, long grass. It was a tough shot, and with the green sloping away from him, nearly impossible to get it close. As he pulled out his sand wedge from his bag, Edwards said, "Get it close," to which Watson responded, "Get it close? Hell, I'm going to sink it." Here's the ABC coverage from that day.
And now comes, possibly the decisive shot of this championship. You can say that any one shot is.
Looks good.
Done.
Looks good. Do you believe it? Do you believe
What
it?
can you say? Tom Watson, pitching into the hole for a birdie, has taken the lead in the U.S. Open. One more par, and he's finally won it.
Watson would also go on to birdie the 18th and win by 2 shots over Nicklaus. It was Watson's only U.S. Open win of his career, but he won it with one of the great shots in golf history. Interestingly, though, nearly lost to history are the putts he made earlier in the round, like his par save on the 10th, which was probably more impressive than the shot he had on 17, hitting his approach into thick grass, chipping to 25 feet, and then hitting the putt for the 4. This year's U.S. Open wrapped up on Sunday, and with it being at Pinehurst, there were a lot of tributes to Payne Stewart and what he did on this day at the 1999 U.S. Open. It was memorable for a lot of reasons. One, Phil Mickelson's wife Amy was expecting their first child, and Phil's caddy famously carried around a beeper the entire tournament, waiting for a message from Amy that she was in labor. Phil had vowed that no matter where he was on the course or what the situation was, if the beeper went off and Amy was in labor, he was heading back to Arizona. In fact, his longtime caddy, Jim Mackay, said when Phil handed him the beeper on Wednesday, he said, "If you want to keep your job, you're going to let me know when this thing goes off." Starting Sunday, he found himself in the final group with Payne Stewart, trailing by a shot. After Stewart bogeyed the 10th and then the 12th, Mickelson led by 1. Most people know what happened on 18, and we'll get to that in just a second. But the more impressive shot that day was the putt Stewart made on 16. After hitting his pitch shot thin and scalding it past the hole by 25 feet, Stewart was staring his second straight bogey in the face. It was a downhill double breaker, and he sank it. Mackay said it was the greatest putt he'd ever seen. And then when Stewart made birdie at 17, he regained a 1-shot advantage. But he found himself in trouble on 18 when his drive missed the fairway and wound up in the deep rough. He laid up to the green, pitched it to 15 feet, and had an uphill putt for par. Mickelson had already putted out for par and watched pensively. Stewart, wearing a sleeveless rain jacket that he had taken scissors to earlier in the day, lined up his putt. A miss, and it would be an 18-hole playoff the following day. Instead, Stewart made the clutch putt for his par to win by 1. He struck his memorable pose that is now captured in bronze and on display at Pinehurst. After an embrace with his caddy Mike Hicks, he turned to Mickelson and told him, "There's nothing like being a father." It was Stewart's second U.S. Open title and his third major win. It would also be his last. Stewart died 4 months later in a plane crash. As for Mickelson, his wife Amy fought contractions throughout the entire tournament, trying to stave off the birth until the tournament was finished. She did finally give birth to their daughter the next day around 6 p.m. with Phil by her side. All right, one more golf story before moving on to the rest of today's episode. Before Ken Venturi brought his golden-throated tones to golf coverage for CBS in the 70s and 80s, he was a touring pro, and on this day in 1964, he won his first tournament as a pro, and it was a big one. The U.S. Open played that year at Congressional Country Club in D.C. Like I've talked about with the U.S. Open in the 60s and earlier, golfers played both round 3 and 4 on Saturday. That's a grind. Now, toss in sweltering triple-digit temperatures, and it's just about survival at that point. Venturi was in vigorous pursuit of leader Tommy Jacobs to start the third round. Trailing by 6 shots to start the day, he was able to work his way back into contention by 15. But as he stepped to the 16th tee, Venturi wobbled and he nearly passed out, and he barely made it back to the clubhouse after putting out on 18. He was looked over by a doctor, given salt tablets because that's what you did back then, and he rested for the entire allotted time that he had, 45 minutes, before going out for his afternoon round. With the temperature that day in D.C. in excess of 100 degrees, Venturi was only concerned about the digits separating him from Jacobs. He started the afternoon 18 down by 2 strokes, but the salt tablets must have helped, and the doctor who walked the final round with him kept a close eye to make sure he did not fall over. Venturi shot 70 to Jacobs' 76 to win his first tournament and his only major, and collect his first winner's check of $17,000. That $17,000 was 5 times what he had made in his previous 27 starts in the 4 years he had spent on tour. On this day in 1993, it was the Chicago Bulls winning another championship. This time, it was John Paxson who hit the big shot. This was Game 6 of the NBA Finals between Chicago and the Phoenix Suns, with the Bulls up 3 games to 2. After Dan Marley airballed a 15-footer, Scottie Pippen came out with the basketball to set up the final play. With 14.1 seconds in the game, Chicago was down 2 and going the length of the court. Phil Jackson drew up the play he called Blind Pig, and here's how it sounded that night.
Michael Jordan will inbound. Pax waiting for BJ to come back, and Michael flips it in to BJ, back to Michael. Michael 11 seconds. Across the timeline he comes, goes to Pippen. Pippen runs down the lane, dumps it out to Horace. Paxson for 3! Yes! Yes! It's the 3! 3 at 9, 10 seconds left, and the Bulls lead 99-98.
And this crowd is stunned. What
Do you believe
shot.
this? Do you believe this?
Paxson's 3 were the only points scored in the fourth quarter by someone other than Jordan. And while most people remember Paxson's shot, what gets lost is that the Suns had a shot to win it. But Horace Grant blocked Kevin Johnson's shot, and time ran out to give the Bulls their 3rd straight NBA title. Interesting tidbit, rocker Alice Cooper is a huge Suns fan, and he was at the game on this night. He says that when the ball came to Paxson, it was right in front of him. Nobody else was playing defense on him, and Alice had the thought of tripping him. But the No More Mr. Nice Guy singer did not interfere and sadly watched the ball arc into the net for the game winner. And on this day in 1984, Dallas Cowboys head coach Tom Landry testified as a character witness for his quarterback, Danny White. White had been charged with assault against 17-year-old John Michael Clark after what could be best classified as a road rage incident on a rural Texas road in the McKinney area. According to White, Clark had been passing him, speeding up, slowing down, and he nearly forced White's van that also had his 3 children into a head-on collision. The two stopped their cars and confronted each other, with White saying that he hit Clark in self-defense. Landry told the court that he didn't think White was a person who would hit someone else without being provoked, going as far as saying, under the same type of stress situation that Danny was under, I might do the same thing. White was later acquitted of the charges. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? If you ever attend a wedding in England, don't be surprised to see a chimney sweep there. It's considered good luck for the sooty gent to kiss the bride and shake the groom's hand. That's all for today, and hey, if you've got a minute and you're enjoying the show, how about leaving a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts? If you're listening on Spotify, you can give a 5-star rating to the show, and you can actually leave a comment about this particular episode if you'd like. I'd appreciate it if you took the time, but no worries if you've got to scoot. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do it all over again. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Podcast Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sports. Learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.